The spirit molecule, a complete descent into the most extraordinary compound on Earth. The molecule that lives inside you. There is a molecule in your body right now, produced by your own cells, tucked into your pineal gland, your lungs, your retina, that, when concentrated and inhaled, will destroy your sense of self so thoroughly and so instantly that you will be catapulted into a dimension that feels more real than the one you just left. It will take 15 seconds. You will be gone in 30. It's called dimethyltryptamine, DMT, the spirit molecule. And the most disorienting fact about it isn't the impossible geometry it conjures, or the luminous entities users report encountering in its depths. The most disorienting fact is this: you are already making it. Your body synthesizes it. It is you. What it's doing inside you, whether it fires during dreams, at the threshold of death, in the deepest troughs of meditation, remains one of the great open wounds in neuroscience. Chemistry, a skeleton key disguised as serotonin. Structurally, DMT is almost laughably simple. It's a tryptamine, built around an indole ring, with two methyl groups attached to a terminal amine. If you could look at serotonin and DMT side by side, you'd barely see the difference. They're molecular siblings, so structurally similar that DMT slides directly into serotonin's receptor sites in the brain, like a key made for a lock it wasn't supposed to open. The primary targets, 5-HT2A receptors, the classical psychedelic gateway. Activation here floods cortical neurons with signaling that produces fractal geometry, ego dissolution, synesthesia, the sensation of time expanding infinitely or collapsing entirely. Sigma-1 receptors, mysterious proteins at the endoplasmic reticulum, involved in neuroprotection and cellular stress response. Rick Strassman suspects Sigma-1 activation is part of what makes the DMT experience feel not like a hallucination, but like a revelation, more real than real. Trace amine-associated receptors, TARs, modulating dopamine, serotonin, and glutamate in ways science is still mapping. The molecule also crashes headlong into the default mode network, DMN, the brain's internal narrator, the neural architecture that constructs your sense of self, that stitches your autobiography together, that keeps the ego coherent and continuous. When the DMN is interrupted, the ego doesn't just quiet down, it evaporates. What remains is pure, centerless awareness. The state mystics of every tradition have described as union with God, dissolution into the all, or the void. History, ancient vine, Cold War laboratory, counterculture legend. The human relationship with DMT stretches back thousands of years into the Amazon basin, where indigenous healers have used ayahuasca, a brew combining DMT containing Psychotria viridis leaves with the MAOI containing Banisteriopsis caapi vine, as a sacrament, a diagnostic tool, and a portal. The MAO inhibitor in the vine is the crucial co-pilot. It blocks the enzyme that would destroy oral DMT in the gut before it could ever reach the brain. Alone, swallowed DMT does nothing. Together, the brew opens a 4-6 hour door. Western science arrived late. Canadian chemist Richard Mansky first synthesized DMT in 1931. Nobody paid attention. Then in 1956, Hungarian chemist Stephen Szara denied access to LSD by Sandoz Laboratories, who suspected him of being a Soviet operative, synthesized his own supply and injected it. He documented the first recorded Western DMT experience. Brilliant geometric visions, a feeling of profound bodily weightlessness, the overwhelming sensation of being elsewhere. The 1960s brought the molecule into the counterculture. Timothy Leary called it the nuclear bomb of the psychedelic family. When Nixon's Controlled Substances Act classified it, Schedule 1, in 1971, research stopped for 2 decades. The modern era began with Rick Strassman, a psychiatrist at the University of New Mexico. After years of battling bureaucracy, Strassman received approval in the early 1990s.
After years of struggle, the trials are finally approved.
To administer intravenous DMT to human volunteers, the first government-sanctioned psychedelic research in 20 years. He administered 400 doses to 60 subjects and documented his findings in the 2001 book, The Spirit Molecule. What he found and couldn't explain was this: a majority of subjects reported with remarkable consistency across demographics and backgrounds, contact with entities, not vague forms, beings, presences described as elves, insects, angels, aliens, fractal intelligences that seemed to expect the visitors, and sometimes communicated information that felt externally sourced. Strassman couldn't account for it then. He still can't. NN-DMT versus 5-MeO-DMT, two entirely different universes. The DMT family contains many compounds, but two stand above all others in potency, prevalence, and profundity. NN-DMT is the classic, the one in ayahuasca, in mimosa root bark, in the seeds of Anadenanthera trees, and endogenously in your own tissue. Smoked or vaporized, it produces an experience of 5-15 minutes of absolute overwhelming multidimensional intensity. The geometry is baroque, fractal architecture of impossible complexity, chromatic lattices that fold through dimensions language can't name. And then, for many people, breakthrough. The ego stops, the familiar room dissolves, and something else is there. The hyperspace, the machine elf dimension, the space that hundreds of thousands of independent accounts describe in strikingly similar terms. Entities, intelligence, the sense of crossing into a territory that has always existed, unseen, just behind the thin membrane of ordinary perception. 5-MeO-DMT is something categorically different. If NN-DMT is a rocket ship to an alien geometry populated by beings, 5-MeO is the deletion of the rocket, the ship, and the person who was going to ride it. There is no geometry, there are no entities, there is no you, there is only an infinite, undifferentiated luminosity. Pure consciousness without content, without boundary, without an observer. Some call it God, some call it the void. Some say it is the most terrifying experience a human being can have. Some say it is the most beautiful. Nearly everyone says it is the most significant. Found naturally in the Sonoran desert toad, Bufo alvarius, and in several plant species, 5-MeO is roughly 4-6 times more potent than NN-DMT by weight. The experience lasts 15-45 minutes. Reintegration, the process of reassembling a coherent self, can take hours, days, or in some cases require sustained therapeutic support. It is also, notably, one of the compounds explicitly named in Trump's 2026 executive order as eligible for FDA, fast-track breakthrough therapy designation. The simplest way to understand the difference: NN-DMT takes you somewhere. 5-MeO makes you realize there is no you to go anywhere. The plants. Where nature hides the molecule, DMT doesn't require a laboratory. Nature synthesizes it with breathtaking generosity. Mimosa hostilis, Mimosa tenuiflora divided by Jurema. A thorny shrub native to Brazil and Mexico, concentrates DMT up to 1% in its root bark and has become the most widely used source for amateur extraction. Acacia confusa, native to Southeast Asia, and Acacia maideni and other Australian acacias contain DMT and NMT, N-methyltryptamine, a milder cousin, in substantial concentrations in their root bark. The genus Acacia is one of the most DMT-saturated on Earth, which has led some researchers to speculate about why evolution would produce DMT so prolifically across unrelated species on separate continents. Psychotria viridis, chacruna, the ayahuasca leaf, cultivated for millennia by Amazonian healers specifically for its DMT content and its synergy with the MAOI vine. The extraction technique circulated among amateur chemists, the STB tech, straight to base, is straightforward by chemistry standards. Pulverize the bark, add a base, lye or sodium carbonate, to freebase the alkaloids. Introduce a non-polar solvent, naphtha or heptane, to draw the DMT out of the plant material. Separate the solvent layer and evaporate. What remains are yellow to white crystals. It is a federal crime. It is also accessible enough that DMT has become one of the most democratized psychedelics, circulating in communities where laboratory access is non-existent. Joe Rogan and the mainstreaming of the molecule. If Rick Strassman gave DMT its scientific voice, Joe Rogan gave it its mass audience. Starting in the early 2010s, Rogan began discussing DMT on his podcast, with the evangelical energy of a man who'd seen something he couldn't unsee. He described breakthrough experiences in vivid, accessible, non-pretentious terms. The launch, the geometry, the entities, the return, in a way that stripped the subject of its counterculture gatekeeping and delivered it directly to millions of people in gym parking lots and late-night commutes. He brought on researchers, authors, and figures like Graham Hancock, who argued that psychedelics may have catalyzed the development of human consciousness itself. He created a feedback loop. Curious listeners tried DMT, came back with reports confirming what Rogan described, and the compound's reputation as something genuinely different from other psychedelics, more intense, more alien, more significant, spread exponentially. The influence crescendoed at the Oval Office on April 18, 2026, when Rogan stood beside cabinet officials and described how a text exchange with President Trump directly sparked the Psychedelic Executive Order. Rogan told Trump that 80,000 Americans died of drug overdoses in 2024, cited dramatic ibogaine recovery statistics, and received back, "Sounds great. Do you want FDA approval? Let's do it." A podcast that had started in a garage had reached, quite literally, the highest seat of American executive power. The Executive Order, Psychedelics enter official America on April 18, 2026. President Trump signed an executive order clearing the way for research into substances that have been illegal under federal law since 1971, when Nixon's Controlled Substances Act classified psychedelics as high-risk drugs with no accepted medical use. The order calls on the FDA to fast-track review of psychedelic drugs, including MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, and ibogaine, and earmarks at least $50 million in federal funds to state-run psychedelic research programs. 5-MeO-DMT was specifically named among the psychedelics eligible for breakthrough therapy fast-tracking. The order also directs the Attorney General to initiate rescheduling reviews for compounds that have completed Phase 3 clinical trials, meaning DMT, LSD, MDMA, psilocybin, and ibogaine could all move out of Schedule Y. The FDA announced it would issue national priority vouchers for 3 psychedelics, allowing certain drugs to be approved quickly, potentially in weeks rather than months. It was the first time the FDA had offered that fast-tracking to any psychedelic substance. Biotech companies working on DMT analogs saw immediate market reaction. Enveric Biosciences, developing a DMT analog designed to rewire brain circuitry by interacting with serotonin-regulating proteins to affect mood, emotions, and cognition, nearly tripled in stock value following the signing. The psychedelic renaissance, long building in research labs and underground circles, had officially been welcomed into American policy. Joe Dispenza, the gateway without the molecule. Here is where the story turns inward, where the suggestion arises that you may not need the bark, the brew, or the crystalline powder at all, that the doorway might already be built into your biology, and that with the right techniques, you can walk through it yourself. Dr. Joe Dispenza, neuroscientist, chiropractor, best-selling author, and host of retreats that draw thousands of people worldwide, has built an entire methodology around the premise that specific breathwork, combined with deep meditation, can stimulate the pineal gland to produce endogenous DMT and trigger states indistinguishable from mystical experience. The theoretical mechanism is elaborate but internally consistent. Dispenza explains a biochemical cascade in which tryptophan transforms into serotonin, serotonin converts into melatonin, and melatonin metabolizes further into powerful compounds, including benzodiazepines and DMT. He emphasizes that these are not imagined states, but measurable biochemical events. The pineal gland, he explains, contains piezoelectric crystals, structures that generate electrical charge when mechanical pressure is applied. The breathwork technique works like this. Participants hyperventilate, breathing in more air than they exhale, for several minutes, then attempt to draw the energy upward along the spine toward the pineal gland. The pressure from the spinal fluid creates compression on the pineal gland, translating into a piezoelectric charge. The calcium carbonate crystals inside the gland become electrically charged, triggering cascades of chemicals from both the pituitary and pineal gland, including oxytocin and DMT. After the breathwork, participants are guided to enter the present moment, letting go of self, identity, body, environment, and time.
Enter the quantum field, the void, pure consciousness.
Dispenza repeatedly instructs participants to become no one, no thing, no time, described as the doorway into the quantum field, the void or pure consciousness. In this space, many report that the inner world becomes more real than the outer world. The retreats are not gentle. The highlight of Dispenza's advanced week-long workshop is typically a pineal gland meditation beginning at 4 a.m. and lasting until 9 a.m. Dispenza has been collecting blood, saliva, and stool samples before and after the meditations, along with EEG data. His research shows the meditation shift brainwaves from beta to alpha to theta, but the most profound mystical moments are marked by bursts of high-frequency gamma waves. Gamma waves are associated with peak cognitive and perceptual integration, the neural signature of moments when everything suddenly, impossibly, makes sense. One physician who attended described beginning to hallucinate faces floating in front of him, feeling like he was walking around the room despite lying on his air mattress wearing eye shades. Very psychedelic, all produced through breath and meditation alone. The scientific establishment is cautious. The claim that meditation can produce clinically significant quantities of endogenous DMT has not been rigorously established. What has been established is that deep meditation produces measurable changes in brain chemistry, reduces cortisol, elevates serotonin and dopamine, and can generate experiences of profound unity, boundary dissolution, and what subjects consistently describe as contact with something larger than themselves. Whether that's DMT or the brain's own extraordinary capacity for self-generated altered states, or both, science hasn't fully closed the question. What Dispenza argues, and what thousands of retreat participants report experientially, is that the divide between chemical mysticism and natural mysticism may be a false one. The chemical is natural. It's yours. It's already inside you. The question is simply whether you know how to turn the key. What it's like, the launch sequence. You hold the vapor in. It tastes faintly chemical, burning plastic, something ancient, something sweet underneath. By the second exhale, the edges of the room begin to breathe. By the third, geometry erupts, not projected onto the ceiling but replacing it, tessellating in chromatic fractals of impossible resolution, folding through dimensions that have no names. Colors appear that shouldn't exist inside the visible spectrum. The room is gone. There's a sound, described across hundreds of independent accounts as a high-pitched carrier tone, a crystalline harmonic hum, or the sound of the universe tearing slightly open. Then, breakthrough, the ego, the narrating, remembering, self-conscious you, simply ceases. What remains is awareness without a center, pure witnessing without a witness. And in that space, for reasons current neuroscience cannot explain, something seems to be there. Presences, entities that feel ancient, amused, and thoroughly unsurprised to see you. They may communicate through visual languages that feel like downloading. Some people weep, some laugh, some report the most profound love they have ever encountered. Some are terrified. Nearly all report it as one of the most significant events of their lives, more vivid and more real than anything that has ever happened to them awake. Then, over 15 minutes, the architecture softens. The fractal scaffolding dissolves. The entities recede like tides. The room reassembles around you piece by piece. You blink. The ceiling is exactly where you left it.
I can't believe what I saw. Was that even real? It's like everything I knew was just a shadow. I have to rethink everything. What is real anymore?
Something has shifted. Not in the room, in your relationship to the question of what the room actually is. In the certainty you used to carry, quietly, unconsciously, that this, all of this, the furniture, the noise, the appointments, the identity, was all there was. The open question DMT doesn't answer anything. It sharpens the question until it cuts. What is consciousness? What were those entities, hallucinated constructs of the unconscious mind? Or something actually encountered? Why is a molecule this simple, this ancient, this distributed throughout nature and woven into our own biology, producing experiences that feel, and have always felt, across every culture that has encountered them, Like contact with something real? Rick Strassman never found the answer. Terence McKenna died still asking. The neuroscientists are building better scanners. The FDA is, for the first time, fast-tracking the research. Joe Dispenza is guiding 10,000 people through 5-hour breathwork sessions at 4 a.m. and recording their gamma waves. And in the Amazon, the curanderos are still brewing ayahuasca in the dark, still crossing the threshold they've always known was there, still returning with reports of the same territory, that impossible, luminous, inhabited space waiting on the other side of the molecule that your body already knows how to make.